Hey guys, how's it going? This is Mike from M&R Automotive. Today we have a 2021 Ford Super Duty and we're installing a 40-inch curved slim light bar. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is remove this plastic trim cover. It's held by push pins and they're all over the place, all on the edges. So we're going to go ahead and start at the edge and kind of work our way around. The way to remove this push pin, you get a screwdriver or a prying tool underneath, lift up the tab, and then when the tab's lifted, you can just remove it. So we're gonna do the same thing, all the push pins that are holding this cover. All right, now that we got all the push pins out the way, I'm gonna go ahead and lift up on the plastic trim piece around the intake, around the handle, and just get this out of the way. Now I wanna remove two nuts, one on each side, that are facing this way. So I'm going to remove it, and that's going to allow the grille to detach from the subframe. Alright, so there's two bolts, one on each side, that are hiding behind these caps. Just get a flathead screwdriver. Let's take off these covers. Just kind of pry them out of the way. And it exposes one bolt on each side. So we remove these as well. It's a 10mm. And we'll do the same thing on the passenger side. Next thing, we're gonna unclip the grille halfway. There's two more things that we have to disconnect before the grille comes off. There is the camera, so there's a harness behind here. And there's also a water line. So I'm just going to kind of peel it back, unclip it. All right, so I'm gonna take a screwdriver. All I'm doing is just lifting this black ring and sliding it out, so that way I can take apart these two fittings. That ring holds these two fittings together. There you go, and I just remove it. So you just kind of peel this back and unplug it. One last thing, there's a brown harness here. There's a button on the bottom. You just press it and pull outward. Press on the button and just unplug it. So now we can unclip the bottom clips and just remove the grille. So now that we have the grille of the Super Duty off, now we have to take off the bottom valence cover. There's 4 push pins on the bottom and 4 push pins on top. And that will allow you to unclip and take this out. You can just go ahead and pull on the trim piece and it should just pop out from the corners. And you can remove it and put it to the side. So now we're gonna unclip this rubber piece. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these push pins. So there's one push pin in the corner, okay? And there's 2 push pins here. You want to unclip one push pin here in the corner, and you want to unclip the second one here. So the second hole is the one we're going to use to slip in the M&R brackets. We're going to take this clip out. We're going to loosen this push pin just by prying it, and we're going to go after the second one as well, because the second one is the one we're going to use. We're going to use that hole, but we're going to replace the push pin with stainless steel hardware. So these are the brackets that you will receive with your M&R kit. There is a driver side mount and there is a passenger side. There's going to be a light bar that's going to go in between these 2 tabs. So the brackets also have a flat pointing down, and there is a hole that's going to get used with supplied hardware instead of the push pins that we just removed in the previous step. So once again, I do want to emphasize that we took out 2 push pins from the back of the bumper. There's one on the inner and one on the outer. We're going to use the one on the outer. So I'm going to go ahead and separate my nuts and bolts with spider washers, and I'm going to thread the bolt into the opening that was holding the push pin from inside the hook area. So you can feel it with your finger. Now you can see the bolt come out from the back end. So now that I have the bolt threaded through the back of the bumper, you can see it on this end, I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way. I'm going to thread bolt through the hole of my M&R bracket. And I'm going to use a supplied washer to tighten it. Not a lot of room in here, but we're just going to finger tighten it, so that way we can get a wrench in here. I'm going to tighten that nut using a 7/16 wrench. I believe the cross reference for 7/16 is 11mm. The spider washers that we installed allows us to not need to hold the head of the bolt on the inside. If it's still slipping, you can still get a wrench in here. It's just not very convenient, so we're going to try to go this route. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually use another 7/16 wrench to hold down the head while we're tightening it down. The hard part is the fact that there's not a lot of space in here, but all you need to do is just put the wrench on the head of the bolt and it should be okay. There we go. Now I can crank it down. Okay, so let's do the same thing on the passenger side. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and peel this flap back as well. And I'm going to insert the bolt with a spider washer. The hole's the outer bolt that we use, not the inner, but the outer. The bolt through the opening, I'm gonna go ahead and thread it through the M&R hole on the bracket. And I'm going to install the spider washers with a nut. All right, so same thing. I'm gonna get 2 wrenches. I'm gonna hold one on the inside and tighten this on the back. All right, I'll put this one on the bottom. It's not the most comfortable position, but I promise you, it's not that bad. Now that we have everything tightened, I'm gonna actually go ahead and put the push pins and reinstall the inner bolt on the flaps. Bam. So we're not using the outer ones because they got replaced with our mounting hardware. Let's do the same thing on the driver's side. Put this back on the inner one. There it goes. And we're gonna do this one too. So the next step of this process will be to reinstall the grill back on, but it is easier to get the wiring inside the engine bay before we do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and route how I'm going to thread my light bar wire. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and pass through it. The light bar is gonna sit in between the tabs. We're gonna run it up, maybe here this way. And then it'll probably come out right behind the headlight. And we're gonna connect it to an auxiliary switch. So I wanna do that before I put the grill on. It'll be a lot easier that way. And now we're gonna go ahead and put the grill back on using reverse order of how we removed it. Make sure to connect your camera on the washer fluid line if you have one. And there's definitely enough space in order to fit the grill with the M&R mounts installed. Now I can install the light bar and pull on this wire in order to remove all the slack in the wiring. So now let's install the light bar in between the M&R brackets using the provided hardware. So now that we've installed the M&R light bar, I'll go ahead and pull on this wire to eliminate any slack. And now we have the wiring, so that way we can connect it to the factory auxiliary switches. If your vehicle is not equipped with auxiliary switches, you can purchase the M&R wireless wiring harness and use that instead of the auxiliary switches to provide power to your light bar or any other accessories. Alright, so now that we have the light bar installed, let's go over the wiring. If you purchase a single function light bar, your light bar wire is going to have 2 strands. You're going to have a red wire, whether it's white or amber, and then you're going to have a black wire that is a ground. If you have purchased a dual function light bar, meaning it has powerful white light and amber DRL, you're actually going to have 3 wires, and you're going to need to provide 2 power sources, meaning 2 auxiliary switches. So you have the black wire, which is the ground, you have your red wire, which is the main function of the light, powerful white light, and then you also have a white wire, and that's going to be your amber DRL. So for the dual function application, you're going to have to use 2 switches. If you have ordered a single function light bar, you're just going to go ahead and use 1 power source and 1 ground. So let me show you how to use the factory auxiliary switches to connect power to our light bar. Alright, so if your vehicle has overhead auxiliary switches inside the cab, that means you probably already have the auxiliary module installed on your truck. What you want to do, we actually want to lift up this whole box, and there's going to be auxiliary wires underneath it. So there's 2 tabs. You want to press them and lift up, and underneath it you have a bundle of wires. So every wire corresponds to a overhead switch, and depending which one you want to use is what color wire we're going to use for the project. Alright, so let's take a look at the wiring. I also have a chart that I pulled up online of all 6 auxiliary switches. Auxiliary 1, that's brown with a green tracer, 25 amps. Auxiliary 2 is violet with an orange tracer, 25 amps. Aux 3 is blue with a green tracer, 25 amps. Aux 4 is gray with a brown tracer, 25 amps. Aux 5 is brown with blue tracer, 40 amps. And Aux 6 is gray with orange tracer, also 40. The main function of the light bar, as well as the DRL function, it doesn't exceed 25 amps. So it doesn't really matter what switch you want to use. I'm going to go ahead and connect it to switch number 2. I'm going to strip the top, attach a crimp connector onto the wire. So the next thing I want to do, I'm actually going to unsheath both of the wiring because I want to separate the black and red just to have a little more distance. We're going to connect the red wire to that crimp connector, and the black we're going to put an eyelet and just put it grounded on the battery. If you do have the amber DRL function, you'll just have an extra wire, a white wire, that you connect to a different aux switch. So let's go ahead and take the sheathing off. This should give us plenty. Now on the black wire, I'm going to go ahead and put an eyelet. So let's go ahead and ground the eyelet. So on the negative terminal of the battery, I'm going to actually use it's a number 10 socket. I'm going to release this bolt. I'm going to go ahead and slide the light bar eyelet through it. Now I'm going to tighten it back up. Let's go ahead and connect the red wire to the crimp, and we can crimp that to auxiliary switch number 2, and we are ready to test it. Alright, so let's go ahead and test it. Oh wow, this thing looks awesome. I love the shape and how it flows with the bumper and the grill, and you guys are going to get plenty of light with this product. Thank you guys for watching. I know you guys are going to love the product, and please stay tuned for night output videos.